The text. Page 357. In medicine, there is no expensive or cheap. If it cures the disease, then the medicine is good. In the Dharma, there is no superior and inferior. Whatever answers to the present opportunity is marvelous. In the past, people's faculties were extraordinary, and their knowledge was like the trees of the forest. Following and practicing a single teaching, they could all attain the way. But today, people's roots are inferior and their knowledge greatly diminished. If they abandon the Pure Land, then they will never attain liberation. I am ashamed that through many births spanning many kalpas, I put down few good roots. My fortune was meager and my intelligence shallow. The obstacles were severe and my bad karma ran deep. In my student years, I did not meet with a good friend, and I never heard of the way passed on by sages and worthies. I was struggling to swallow the anti-Buddhist poison of Han Yu and Yang Shu, but before I could complete my studies, the strength of my karma manifested itself. From this time I was afflicted with illness for several years, which left me unable to attend to my affairs. I thought deeply about the gods and spirits of heaven and earth, and how eminent they are. The sages and worthies of the past and present are just as numerous. Besides, Buddhist teachings have no authority with which to intimidate people into following them. They must rely on holy ones, gentlemen, and sages, Shang, Jun, Xian, to uphold them. Only thus can they circulate throughout the world. If the teachings brought such results as Han Yu and Yang Shu say, and went against the sagely way, Sheng Dao, then they would bring harm to China. Not only that, but if all of the sages and worthies of the past and present were not able to accommodate Buddhist teachings in the world, would not the gods and spirits of heaven and earth have annihilated them long ago? Why would they have waited for Han Yu and Yang Shu to refute them with empty words? The doctrine of the mean, Zhongyang, says that in the way of the sage as well as the way of foolish men and women there exist both knowledge and practice. Yet in their farthest extent even the sage is unable to know or put into practice some things. Now, even though Han Yu and Yang Shu were worthies, Xian, they were far from being sages, Sheng. And what is it that even worthies and sages cannot know or do? The very teachings of Buddhism, which common sentiment and worldly knowledge cannot infer. Thus, I quickly altered my past mind, and left the household life to become a monk. I took stock of my abilities, and saw that, if I did not rely on the power of the Tathagata's all-encompassing vows, it would certainly be difficult to attain samadhi and leave the cycle of birth and death. From that time on, the Buddha was my only thought, the Pure Land my only goal. For many years, I recklessly took to the lecture mat, and for a long time practiced Chan meditation. However, it was only for the purpose of shedding light on the first truths of the Pure Land and attain the necessary qualifications for a superior rank, Shangpin, rebirth in the Pure Land. Regrettably, I was physically weak and frail, and had difficulty maintaining fierce and heroic practice. But since I had firmly taken hold of the Buddha's vows, all the lecturers and meditation teachers in the world, page 358, could not shake it from my grasp. Even if all the Buddhas were to appear and tell me to practice the other methods of cultivation, I still would not be willing to let go of this and take up that in violation of my original plan. However, my past karma was such that, to the end I never achieved the state of a unified, undisturbed mind, Yi Xin Bu Luan, so as to attain for myself the samadhi of Buddha recollection, Nianfo Sanmei. My shame is so great. One day, there was a senior monk who had long engaged in Chan meditation and had also penetrated deeply into Buddhist doctrines. and he was contemptuous of everything else. 10 He had vowed to achieve the realization of the one vehicle, and imitated Sudana's travels to many different teachers. In this way he had come to Hong Luo Mountain, Yinguang's residence at that time, to ask for lodging. At that time, I happened to be reading the Essentials of the Amitabha Sutra, a work whose words are deep and whose doctrines are wonderful, not suitable for those of childish understanding. I wanted to collect and edit Tian Tai teachings, and assemble them point by point into a document in order that the beginning student could more easily make progress. It wasn't that I dared to mimic the way that the virtuous monks of old propagated and commented on the wonders of the way. I just wanted to create better conditions for those who might enter the way after me. I was glad of this monk's arrival, and I gave him a copy of the Essentials, and told him of my intentions. This senior monk then said to me, "I've looked at the Essentials before. Look here where it says, none of the marvelous treasures of Huayan teachings, the secret marrow of the Lotus Sutra, the essential mind of all the Buddhas, and the guidance of the 10,000 Bodhisattva practices go beyond this. If this, i.e., Pure Land teachings, is so broad that one cannot count all instantiations of it, then this is to suppress the teachings of all the individual schools of Buddhism, and praise the Pure Land too much, to slander the wheel of the orthodox Dharma, and to mislead the people. 100 million great teacher Uyi, Shishu, s. using 1,000 rarely seen knowledges and insights, do not match the direct pointing to the human mind and the propagation of calm abiding and insight meditations. Quite the opposite. In grasping at this, Essentials, the way that common people grasp at magic amulets to protect their bodies, all the clergy and laypeople in the world will clutch at a single method and abandon the 10,000 practices of Buddhism, taking the puddle and abandoning the great sea. This is the same as entering into the wrong way and turning one's back on the road to enlightenment, extirpating all the seeds of Buddhahood, an offense that would fill all of space. Someone who genuinely wants to repay the Buddha's kindness will waste no time in utterly exterminating this teaching, and to write a document to help it gain currency. It is just too much." His voice was filled with indignation, as if he were facing an enemy. I waited until he had calmed down, and then gently answered him, saying, "So you look on this Essentials of Uyi, Shishu, as a mire of offense. But you only know the end of its stream. You don't know its source. This is like a stupid dog chasing after a clod of earth, and not like the king of geese who chooses milk. You should know that the transcendent truth is not in this Essentials by Master Uyi. Rather, it is in Sakyamuni Buddha, Amitabha Buddha, and all the Buddhas of the 10 directions, along with the 3 Pure Land Sutras, the Avatamsaka Sutra, the Lotus Sutra, and all Mahayana Sutras. It is in Manjusri, Samantabhadra, Asvagosa, Nagarjuna, Tiantai, Ziyi, Shandao, Qingjing, Yangming, Yanshao, and all the great masters and bodhisattvas. If you consider yourself a Dharma king, then please correct their fault." p.359. Put what you have just said into practice throughout the world. If you don't, then people will take a common bumpkin from the fields and mistakenly address him as Your Majesty, taking the law into their own hands and betraying the kingship. In no great time they will exterminate the households and destroy the people. Do not talk this way, slandering the Buddha, slandering the Dharma, slandering the monastic community, lest you fall into the Avicii hell, there to suffer for interminable eons without respite. You are presuming upon the small amount of good fortune you accumulated in former lives, to create endless eons of bitter retribution. When all the Buddhas of the past, present, and future speak of the one who is most to be pitied, they will mean you." Alarmed by this, he said, Master, you say that the fault extends to Sakyamuni Buddha, Amitabha Buddha, and so forth. What kind of extraordinary statement is this? Please lay out your reasoning. If it is convincing, then dare I not submit? I responded, the Tathagata appears in the world because of the causes and conditions arising from one great matter. The term, causes and conditions arising from one great matter, means his desire to lead all beings to open their perception and enter into a Buddha's vision of wisdom. And straightaway become Buddhas themselves, that's all. Could there be any other cause? It is inevitable that beings will have roots either great or small, and delusions either shallow or profound, and so it is not feasible to elaborate the Buddha's original desire directly. Consequently, he lays out his teachings according to beings' abilities, and prescribes medicines according to the disease. For the sake of truth he sets forth provisional teachings, and by means of the provisional he manifests the truth. Within the one vehicle Dharma, he makes all manner and variety of explanations. If there are those whose roots of virtue are ripe, then he causes them to reach the shore of enlightenment, and if there are those whose evil karma is deep and thick, then he causes them to gradually emerge from their defilements and vexations. He stoops to meet and lead them, bringing them step by step to a right understanding. All the mothers and fathers of heaven and earth cannot compare with even a portion of his kindness and skill. Furthermore, all of the Dharma gates depend upon one's own power, so that even if one's karmic roots are deep and thick, one must cause them to thoroughly see their own minds. If there remains even the slightest degree of delusion in one's own view of either principle or phenomena, then in dependence upon this pre-existing karma one will not emerge from the wheel of birth and death. Moreover, they will have once again entered the darkness of the womb, and having made contact they will give rise to grasping. Those who proceed from awakening to awakening are few, while those who go from delusion to delusion are many. If even those of the highest capacities are like this, then we need not even bring up those of middling and inferior capacities. Trying to cut off delusions about principle is like trying to cut off a river 40 li wide. How much more difficult would it be to cut off delusions about phenomena? To beings of the three kinds of roots, i.e., superior, middling, and inferior, only the Pure Land teachings set forth exclusive dependence upon the power of Amitabha Buddha's great vows. Regardless of whether or not one's good roots have ripened, or whether one's bad karma is light or heavy, one need only be willing to generate faith and make the vows and recite the Buddha's name, and at the end of one's life, Amitabha Buddha will compassionately descend to meet and guide one to rebirth in the Pure Land. This is in order that those whose good roots have ripened may immediately attain to the sudden fruition of perfect Buddhahood, while those whose evil karma is heavy may enter the holy stream. This is the essential path by which the Buddhas of the past, present, and future save all beings. Page 360. And this is the marvelous Dharma practiced by holy ones and worldlings alike. All of the Mahayana scriptures derive their fundamental teachings from this, and there is no patriarch or master in history who has not practiced it. You have taken refuge in meditation and doctrinal study, and foolishly say that those who propagate Pure Land teachings slander the orthodox wheel of Dharma and cut off their seeds of Buddhahood. This is adequate proof that demons have attached themselves to your body and you have taken leave of your senses. These are the hell seeds of seeing delusion as enlightenment, and pointing to the truth while calling it heresy. Now, distant eons in the past, Sakyamuni Buddha and Amitabha Buddha generated great vows to lead all sentient beings to liberation. The first manifested in the impure world, so that by means of impurity and suffering he could break its hold on beings and impel them to escape from it. The other establishes his pure land so that by means of its purity and joy he could gather them all in and then bring them along. Your knowledge is limited to the ignorant men and women who can only recite the Buddha's name, and this leads you to denigrate the Pure Land. But why not look at the Gandavyuha section of the Avatamsaka Sutra, where Sudana, after attaining equality with all Buddhas, is taught by Samantabhadra to generate the 10 great vow kings, and dedicate the merit of these acts to rebirth in the Western paradise. There to attain perfect Buddhahood, and moreover to urge these vows on all the assembly of the Lotus Sea? Now among the assembly of the Lotus Sea, there are no worldlings, nor are there 2 vehicles to salvation. All the great Dharmakaya masters at all 41 stages have broken through ignorance, realized their Dharma nature, and can ride the wheel of the original vow to manifest as Buddhas in any world that lacks a Buddha. Among this Lotus Sea assembly, there are pure lands without number, and so it must be that those who dedicate merit toward attaining rebirth in the Western land of utmost bliss can be assured that, having gained this rebirth, they have taken the hidden gate out of suffering and the short path to becoming a Buddha. That is why, from ancient times until the present, those in all monasteries, whether devoted to meditation, doctrinal study, or monastic precepts, recite Amitabha, Buddha's name in their morning and evening chanting services, and seek rebirth in the West. How is it that you, with all the time you have spent participating in monastic life, now turn around and seek to destroy and slander your own daily practice? Surely there has never been anyone to whom the Confucian dictum, "He participates but does not revere, he uses it daily but does not know," applied more aptly. Now the Avatamsaka is considered the king of scriptures, reigning over the entire canon. One who does not believe the Avatamsaka is an Aikchantika. Even though you may not fall into the Avicii hell, in the end you will certainly sink lower and lower without respite. I wish to escape from suffering and seek rebirth in the Pure Land, while you desire to look for suffering by destroying and maligning the Avatamsaka. You keep to your intention, and I will tread my own path. The general does not come down from his horse. Each must press ahead of his own accord. There is no common ground between us. You can go. I will not speak with you. He said, the way is precious and reaches to all, and doubts must be analyzed and resolved. Master, what is the view that you reject so deeply? Listen to this. Vairocana, Buddha, permeates everywhere, and the abode of his Buddhas is called eternal quiescent light. Yinguang, page 361. However, wherever the Dharmakaya is attained, that place is the pure land of quiescent light, Yinguang Jingtu. So what need is there to let the mind of production and cessation forsake the East and choose the West, considering this again? I said, easier said than done. Although it is true that this very place is the pure land of quiescent light, still, one who has not attained perfect wisdom and thoroughly cut off all vexations and perfectly realized the Dharmakaya of Vairocana cannot thoroughly gain it and apply it. The 41 stages of abodes, practices, dedications of merit, grounds, and awakening to equality in the perfect teaching still involve progressive attainments. If you have perfectly realized the Dharmakaya of Vairocana, then you could very well say that this very place is the land of quiescent light. But for those who have not yet attained to this is like telling them to eat jewels. They would inevitably starve and die. He said, my school has always affirmed mind only pure land, and the self-nature Amitabha. This cannot be wrong. I replied, what your school says refers exclusively to the nature of principle, lixing. It does not refer to practice in the phenomenal realm, shisho. What this means is that you want people to begin by realizing the principle that one is born a Buddha without involving false dualities of cause and effect. practice and attainment, worldlings and holy ones, and only afterward begin practicing the causes and attain the fruit, transcendence of the worldly, and entrance into the holy. This is to say that sentient beings as sentient beings attain the Buddha way. This is how you misconstrue principle and phenomena, and turn the view of wisdom on its head. Again, you consider forsaking the East and choosing the West to be production and cessation. What you do not know is that to grasp at the East and disparage the West is nihilism. Now, without having attained subtle enlightenment, who can dispense with choosing one and forsaking the other? During 3 incalculable eons of practice, in 100 kalpas of cultivating the causes of enlightenment, in seeking from those above and converting those below, in cutting off delusion and attaining truth, where would there be no choosing one thing and forsaking something else? You must realize that the Tathagata wishes to lead all sentient beings to the realization of the Dharmakaya and the land of quiescent light. And thus he specially recommends the recitation of the Buddha's name in order to seek rebirth in the West. Question. Elder Xiaobo Li, i.e., Li Tongxuan, 635–730, in his Avatamsaka Sutra with exposition, says that the Western Pure Land is a concept for worldlings who still grasp at the characteristics of phenomena and do not yet believe in the true principle of the emptiness of dharmas. It concentrates their minds in recollection, partially purifies their minds, and enables them to attain rebirth in the Pure Land. It is provisional, not the absolute truth. So why would the Lotus Sea Assembly desire to go together for rebirth in this Pure Land? Master Xiaobo achieved sainthood during his own lifetime, and possessed inconceivable supernormal perception and wisdom. He was surely a manifestation of one of the bodhisattvas of the Lotus Assembly, and his words cannot be erroneous. Answer. Even though Master Xiaobo was a manifestation of a bodhisattva, the scripture had not yet been fully transmitted to China, and he had no way of prejudging how it would end. That is why he spoke in this way. Xiaobo composed his exposition during the Kaiyuan reign period of Emperor Xuanzong of the Tang, i.e., between 713 to his death in 730. He died after finishing the work. Over 50 years later, during the 11th year of the Junyuan reign period of Emperor Dezong of the Tang, i.e., 795, the king of the South Indian Kingdom of Odra sent over a 40-fascicle Sanskrit copy of the chapter on the practice of Samantabhadra's vows, Puxian Xingyuan Pin, page 362, and it was not until 798 that it was translated and began to circulate. The first 39 fascicles correspond to the Gandavyuha of the 80-fascicle Avatamsaka Sutra, and it adds some details. In its 18th fascicle, Sudana's attainments, gained through Samantabhadra's authority and power, become equal to those of Samantabhadra and all Buddhas. Samantabhadra then proclaims Gathas praising the miraculous merits of the Tathagata. The text is incomplete, and closes on an inconclusive note. Then the chapter on the practice of Samantabhadra's vows arrived, and in its 40th fascicle, Samantabhadra counsels Sudana and the entire Lotus Sea Assembly to dedicate the merits from the practice of the 10 great vow kings to rebirth in the Western Paradise. After this council, the Tathagata gives his approbation, and the Great Assembly puts it into practice. Thus the text was finally complete. That is why ancient masters appended this one fascicle onto their commentaries on the 80-fascicle Avatamsaka. They desired that later practitioners would all receive and support the scripture in its entirety. The ancient masters explained that this one method of seeking rebirth in the Pure Land was something that only the Buddha with the other Buddhas could penetrate completely. The fact that bodhisattvas of the first ground cannot know even a fraction of it is due to just this. Consequently, the Pure Land takes in all those of superior roots and sharp faculties. The Great Collection Sutra, Daji Jing, says, in the time of the final Dharma, myriads and myriads of beings will cultivate religious practices, but only a few will attain the way. Only in dependence upon the practice of reciting the Buddha's name can they escape the cycle of birth and death. Thus, all humans and gods, and all beings in the 6 realms of rebirth, are entangled in worldliness. But the Pure Land encompasses them all without exception. Now, you believe Master Xiaobo, but you do not believe the chapter on the practice of Samantabhadra's vows or the Great Collection Sutra. This is like obeying a temporary county ordinance while violating the eternal decree of the emperor. How is it that you do not know how to distinguish elder and junior, trivial and important? Question. But if Master Xiaobo was a manifestation of one of the bodhisattvas of the Lotus Sea Assembly, why would he have had to wait for the transmission of the sutra into China before he knew this? Answer. Spreading the Buddha's teachings is no easy matter. It can only be believed on the basis of evidence. The Avatamsaka Sutra transcends the collection of all other scriptures by far, and there is no way to categorize it, so it must be taken on its own merits. Question. Then how could Master Daosheng have known and advocated the teaching that even IC Chantikas have Buddha nature before the complete text of the Nirvana Sutra arrived? Are you saying that Master Xiaobo was not the equal of Master Daosheng? Answer. Ikchantikas are living beings. And all living beings have Buddha nature. Anyone with wisdom could have foreseen that. No scripture asserts that rebirth, in the Pure Land, is the perfect fulfillment of the fruit of Buddhahood. Who would dare to set up such a strange teaching on the basis of their own thinking? The two are incommensurable in principle, and in their particulars, and they cannot be drawn upon for proof. As for the attainments of the two masters, that is not something that anyone in my generation of worldly beings can know. How could I dare to discuss it? Surely you must know, page 363, that when bodhisattvas propagate the teachings, sometimes it goes against the grain of their hearers, and sometimes with the grain, so that they have many, many kinds of expedient means. It is inconceivable. So would it necessarily not be the case that Master Xiaobo merely acted as if he did not know in order to strengthen future generations in their belief?